Hi there, Facebook. It's been a while since we spoke, but I'm going to speak maybe right up toward tip-off here tonight about LeBron NBA playoffs and the prospect, the possibility of Kawhi Leonard leaving the Spurs, which I think is going to happen because I think they're about done with him and they will put him on the trade market, and maybe winding up with the Philadelphia 76ers. I will get to that shortly, but before I get to LeBron, Raptors, somebody's got to make a cameo here. Somebody's got to take over the stage, as she always does. She steals the show from me every time here on Facebook Live. That is the daughter of my wife Ernestine and I, named Hazel. Is getting a little too big for me to hold. Thank you. I think I need to get my nose clean before. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Hazel. Say hi to Facebook. She's a big girl now. She's a year and a half, maybe. She can run. She can wrestle. She can bite. Just play bite. Hi, Hazel. She's in a better mood tonight. Yeah, very happy girl. Thank you very much, Hazel. Fine. Thank you. That's Hazel. I'm Skip. Your Facebook Live. He's the king. Best player on the planet, says my partner on Undisputed, LeShannon Sharp. We will do battle tomorrow morning, as always, 9:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Pacific Time on Fox Sports 1. The show is called Undisputed if you haven't checked it out, and I'm sure you have, but please check it out tomorrow because we will be reacting to Game 1, obviously, of the Eastern Conference semifinals. LeBron at Raptors, number 1 seed. LeBron, 6.5 point underdog tonight. LeBron and company, LeBron's team anyway, man, an underdog for the first time in LeBron's career in the East ahead of the finals. You have to go way back to a series versus the Boston Celtics in semifinals of 2008 to find the last time LeBron's team was an underdog. I'll be honest, I don't get that. But I will get to that in a moment. The other thing I did not get, that I got to get off my chest, and by the way, speaking of my chest, if you can see this, I'm wearing this shirt. Thank you very much. Can you see it? Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's in honor of the world's biggest Cowboy fan, LeBron James. Tonight, I work for Fox, but I am a Cowboy fan. So is LeBron. That's the only thing we have in common. But I do try to speak the truth about LeBron, and I'm going to speak it one more time about what happened Sunday in Cleveland, Game 7 versus the Indiana Pacers. I'm going to say this one more time, and I got a little more time here on Facebook Live to get a little deeper into it. I tweeted about it. We spoke briefly about it in what we call our A block, our first topic, on Monday morning on Undisputed. Again, 9:30 Eastern Time on Fox Sports 1. But with a minute left in the third quarter, after the Pacers had come storming back as usual, as they did game after game after game after game against LeBron and company, cutting a halftime lead on Sunday of 12 points all the way down to 1 point, LeBron suddenly checked out of the game. He wasn't limping. He walked up the tunnel to the locker room. Strange. What happened? Was he hurt? No, said ABC. Cramps. Cavs said he has cramps. Interesting. Well, the one and only other time I saw LeBron with cramps was, as you probably recall, Game 1 of the NBA Finals 2014 versus my San Antonio Spurs in San Antonio the night the air conditioning failed, and yet the only player who played in that game who cramped, and it was a little drippy in the building, but only one player only cramped, and that was in the heat of battle in the fourth quarter of a very close game in which, at that point, as I recall, let me get this right. The Spurs led by 4 at that point. I think there was 7 minutes left when he cramped and went out. And then he sat for a little bit. He came back in, and he was limping around. He actually limped in and made a layup. And 30 seconds later, he took himself out, and the Spurs went on another big run and won the game going away. Game 1, last time that I saw him cramp. So I didn't see any evidence of cramping at all. What do I know about cramping? I've run a whole bunch of marathons, and twice in marathons I've cramped, but the first time was my very first marathon, which I ran in San Francisco. It was quite a while ago, but I didn't hydrate right, and by the finish line, I was getting a little limpy, and by the time I crossed in downtown San Francisco, I just locked up. It was all-time painful. I thought I was going to die. My right calf, as I recall, just locked, and I was just in anguish because it just locks, man. You are out of liquid, and it seizes up, and it's like knives are stuck in your calf, and you just want to be put out of your misery. And one of the medics came over and tried to help me, but there's not a lot that can try to massage it. But anyway, the point is, it just debilitating. It just shuts you down, and for a second, you just want to die. You just want it to stop, and maybe you've had a cramp in bed, and it's kind of like that, where it just gets stuck, and you just think, I can't get through this. Well, that's a cramp. So LeBron was cramping, but we didn't see any evidence of limping. I didn't see any grimacing. I don't know what happened. LeBron did say that, I think it came from the Cavs, that he was offered an IV. Obviously, the quickest way to hydrate would be to stick the little needle in your arm and just get intravenous fluid as fast as you can. He was seen eating an orange when he came back on the bench, which would help some. Gatorade would help a lot. Whatever aid. I'm not trying to promote Gatorade. Water would actually help. But any sort of liquid. But I didn't see any evidence of that. So I hark back to what I reported 2014. I have a good source inside the Miami Heat who actually told me, I contacted that source just to find out exactly what happened with LeBron's cramps, and my source told me that the Heat medical staff, training staff, had found that LeBron's body actually seized up under stress. It wasn't so much lack of hydration, and by the way, LeBron is, I'm not going to say he's the best conditioned athlete, because there are a lot of well-conditioned athletes, but he's at the top. I don't think anybody's better conditioned or has more knowledge of their body than LeBron James. So it's odd that a LeBron James, Iron Man, the guy who played the most minutes in the NBA, would not hydrate before and during a Game 7. I mean, it's just obviously about drinking. You just got to drink. When you're, before you run a marathon, during the marathon, you just have to drink because it's going to go fast, depending on what the temperature is outside. But this is obviously a fairly controlled environment inside. So my point about Sunday is, he just checked out, walked to the locker room, and I'm wondering if he just got overwhelmed psychologically. And I'm not crushing him for this, because what a load he was carrying. Because look what had happened for 6 3/4 games against the Pacers. Nate McMillan, the rival coach, had just said, and this was unusual, and I don't think we're going to see this tonight at Toronto, but Nate just said, I'm just going to put one guy on him. If he wants to shoot a layup drill all night long, he can have any layup he wants on Bogdanovich or occasionally on Lance. All Lance can do is just try to bother him, to blow in his ear or trash talk him or just try to distract him. He finally distracted him, obviously, in Game 4, 6 minutes to go, into a technical foul, a little pushback. Just try to get under his skin, get in his psyche. Just try to get him off his game, because Lance is 6'5" and LeBron's 6'9". He can't guard him, and LeBron just backs him down, as we saw Sunday, into the low post. Back down, dribble, and just wheels on him and scores on him. It's just mismatch, height-wise and strength-wise, in the low post. And how many layups did LeBron shoot where he's not even dunking it, he's just laying it up? How many of those do we see? It's just a parade. And Nate McMillan is just wearing LeBron down and out by letting him score on a single defender. There's not much help. Occasionally there was a little help, but not much. And the whole idea to me was, let him score 50. Let him score whatever he needs to, whatever he wants to score until he runs out of gas, both physically and mentally. But let's make sure that we stay on all the other shooters. Let's not let anybody else score 20, and they didn't. And yet, LeBron's gone for about 5 minutes. That's from 1 minute left in the third quarter into the fourth quarter. And what happened in that stretch? An incredible thing happened. Nobody's making a big enough deal of this. LeBron James has checked out of the game. I don't know exactly why, but I'm just going to guess. This is just me. It just looked like he just got overwhelmed and needed to go just take a break. That it was just crushing him, and the Pacers just wouldn't go away, wouldn't leave him alone. I like what Jeff Van Gundy, one of my favorite movies is Rounders, and he used the Teddy KGB line when he and Matt Damon are going at it for all the marbles at the end of the movie. And Teddy KGB says, hanging around, hanging around, hanging around. And that's all they were doing. And it was just driving Teddy crazy and driving LeBron crazy. And the incredible thing that nobody has seized upon is that in this stretch, the other quote-unquote all-star on the team, he has made an all-star. What's Kevin Love made? A couple all-star teams? What am I? I'm losing track. 3? But Kevin Love, the other all-star, he made big shots, huge shots. These are season-saving, eventually like LeBron career-saving kind of shots. Kevin Love makes a huge 3, then he makes a mid-range jump shot, and in between, George Hill makes 2 free throws, and then Jeff Green makes 2 free throws. And the Cleveland Cavaliers go on a mini run without LeBron James on the floor. And nobody knows exactly why except for quote-unquote cramps. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm buying the cramp part. I'm not seeing cramps. Whatever, he's checked out. And then just seconds after he walks back onto the floor to resume playing, Kevin Love makes another bomb 3. And they go from a 1-point lead when LeBron checked out to a 12-point lead. What? They're up 12, and the game is basically over. And Kevin Love saved the season. I don't care what you say. And I've just fought with Shannon about this, and he doesn't want to hear a word of it. So just let me get this off my chest before I get to the Raptors. Kevin Love saved their season. Don't tell me he doesn't have help, because that was huge. And meanwhile, Victor Oladipo, for whom I've gained respect, he had a breakout year and a breakout game 1 and a breakout game 6. And yet there it was, silver platter, LeBron's gone, and you got to assert yourself. He missed a couple of minutes at the start of the fourth quarter, but even so, if I'm Nate McMillan, I'm saying, let's go. Let's jump. You didn't know at that point if and when LeBron would come back, if at all. And yet this is where you seize the moment and seize Cleveland by the throat. All the non-LeBrons, the lack of help, that's all that's left. And if you're the Pacers and you've scratched and clawed to this point, hanging around, and now you have to run through the door that is wide open, left wide open. And yet, in the end, there's no Oladipo. In that whole stretch, he registers nothing in the box score. He doesn't take a shot. He doesn't make a shot. He doesn't do anything. So your quote-unquote LeBron, your best player, your number 1 player, does nothing while the king is checked out. He's either in the locker room or sitting at the end of the bench eating orange slices. What? Just incredible. So to me, bottom line to this discussion, the Pacers believed they could compete with the king, but in the end, when they had their chance, they did not believe they could dethrone the king. So I had to sit and listen to Victor Oladipo say, anybody who doesn't respect us now, I got no respect for. Okay, great. You competed, you hung in, you made it 7 games when most people, if not, I don't know, anybody who thought, some people thought it would go 7 games because the Pacers won 3 out of 4 in the regular season. I thought it would go 7 games, and I almost picked the Pacers, but I just couldn't because I just wasn't sure they really believed that they could dethrone that guy, because that guy is obviously way better than their guy, and that's, in the end, that's all it was all about. Victor Oladipo shrank or disappeared when it was time, and LeBron, thanks to Kevin Love, advanced. Which brings us to tonight. I'm sorry. I just can't respect Toronto. This is, Shannon says I'm my partner, LeShannon Sharp, as I call him, on Undisputed, again, 9:30 to noon Eastern on Fox Sports 1. He says I'm playing tricks here, that I'm trying to set up LeBron for a fall. I'm not at all. There's no hidden agenda at all. I'm just trying to tell you exactly what I've been telling you all year long, or all last year, or all the year before. I just can't respect DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry as the leaders, as the driving forces of the Toronto Raptors. Once again, they had a terrific year. They're the 1 seed. I have nothing bad to say about their regular season except for what happened on April the 3rd. And whatever the other dates were, they played Cleveland 3 times and they lost twice. And I really thought April 3rd was significant because it was at Cleveland. Cleveland was still trying to find itself with the new guys, the big bombshell additions at the trade deadline. And I thought, this is their time and their turn. They need to make a statement that will resonate, that will resound through the potential second round of the playoffs. They need to go in there and say, hey, King, watch this. Different now. We got Van Vliet coming off our bench. We got Siakam coming off our bench. We got a bench. We got 10 guys instead of 2 guys, if you will. Watch this, King. And I watched for a half. It was interesting for a half. And then you know the rest of the story. It was the same old story. And I still think it's going to be the same old story this time. Again, LeBron's quote after the game was, I'm burnt. He wasn't saying I'm physically drained, because he's not. He'll be just fine physically. He just meant he was mentally fried by the Pacers. And I think he was mentally fried by Nate McMillan's strategy. And I think he was mentally fried by the entire focus and weight of the Cavs nation on his shoulders, because Nate put it on his shoulders. You beat us. You score at will. Do whatever you want to do. Just do whatever. Again, run a layup drill. Run a layup, one-man layup line and score 50. But we're not going to let anybody else go off on us. We're not going to let all your array of snipers shoot us out of the gym in Cleveland. And so, as you know, every game was close. And there were 2 blowouts against the Pacers, and they were both Pacers blowouts. And the Pacers won the total 7-game score by 40 points. Credit Nate McMillan. Dwayne Casey, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure he's a very good basketball coach. He's a tough guy. He's an old school, hard-nosed, watch this kind of guy. I do it my way, and his way is not Nate's way. And I'm pretty sure they're going to run multiple defenders at LeBron, as they always do. And I'm pretty sure that LeBron will be able to find open shooters. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of the guys who didn't get going against the Pacers are going to get going tonight. The shots will be there. And I'm here to suggest that LeBron's bench, his team, is just better than Toronto's team. I love Van Vliet. I loved him in college, Wichita State. And he comes in, he's like Terry Rozier. He's just fearless. He just believes he can play. And yet, That's not going to be enough because Cleveland's bench, thanks to the bombshell at the trade deadline, is deep and it's talented. And we did not see Rodney Hood or Jordan Clarkson, or Larry Nance Jr., or even, for that matter, George Hill, because he was hurt for a stretch. We didn't see them go off the way they can go off. Tonight it starts. They got the first round jitters out of their systems because the new guys obviously were feeling the weight of the Cavs world, as in, are we going to be the reasons? Are we going to be the scapegoats for LeBron losing the first round series of his entire 15-year career? Well, that's a lot of stress and pressure on those guys. And clearly it got to them. And they weren't free flowing. They weren't shooting it like they meant it. They weren't shooting with conviction or poise or confidence that I saw them shoot it with during the regular season. These are talented players, man. And they can all shoot it. And so, Ty Lue, I think it was LeBron's decision. I still think he coaches the Cavs in big picture decisions. I think LeBron just said before the game, let's just go with, the old Texas expression. Let's just dance with who brung us. Let's go back to the guys who have been in big games, been in finals. Let's start our five who know what it feels like to play in a big game. And they went back to Tristan Thompson, and I've been beating the desk on Undisputed for, 2 weeks. Play Tristan. Just play Tristan. He knows how to play. He got the contract for a reason. I know he's been distracted off the floor. I don't care. Just let him have a shot at a game 7. In any big game, just let him have a shot because he can play with extreme energy. And he's crafty, and he's got some Rodman in him, or, under the basket. He's just got that knack and nose for the ball and for body angles, and he'll just out-scrap you for balls. And then he made a big block, obviously with a minute 20 left on Collison. It didn't, save the game, but it was a nice block, and he's capable. So you play him more, and you play JR more, and you play Kyle Korver more, and again, the Cavs are just better. So tonight is about the other two guys. There's something about those two. They look across the floor at the king, the beast of the East, and they just psychologically genuflect. It's effectively dropping to your knees and we worship the king. They shrink. They turn into what Shannon Sharp calls them, the baby dinosaurs. The Raptors have short arms, and their arms just sort of recede into their bodies, and they play small because they're not LeBron and they're all stars, but they know deep down they're not the stars. And neither one of them have played very well, especially DeRozan against LeBron. So they got swept last year, and those two have lost 8 of their last 10 playoff games to LeBron James. I think it continues on tonight. I plunged and said sweep. And again, this is another case. It's sort of like Philly-Boston last night, where LeBron and company had to scratch and claw themselves to get through their 7 games against the Pacers, but they are battle-tested. They are on edge. And again, I don't think it took physical out of them as much as it took mental out of them, but now they can heave a big sigh of relief and go in with their fighting edge. And Toronto clinched a little bit earlier, and I just think Drake's going to be there tonight, I assume. I don't know that for a fact. He just always seems to be there for all the big games. And the mere sight of Drake just inspires LeBron. He'll play higher, and the mere sight of Drake puts more pressure on the two Toronto stars. And I just don't think they'll be great. And I think it'll be a close game, and I think the non-LeBrons will all contribute in ways you haven't seen consistently against the Pacers. And I just believe they're going to win game 1. I tried to get LeShannon Sharp. He picked, believe it or not, the Raptors to beat his king tonight. I just couldn't believe it. And he said, well, I'm just being honest. Okay, I respect that. So I said, spread's 6.5. They're 6.5-point underdogs. That's pretty significant. Game 1. So I asked Shannon, I'll take those 6.5. I'll take the king plus 6.5. We got role reversal going on, in this case, on Undisputed. He's obviously a huge LeBron idolater. And he wouldn't do it. He said, I don't want to bet against or have to root against the king. And I accept that. I respect that. I actually anticipated that. But I offered the same bet to Jim Jackson. He wanted to go straight up. I said, no, I'll take 6.5 because I'm not that committed to what I believe. I just think the 6.5 point underdog can win tonight. And if the Cavs do, look out, because then I definitely think they can win game 2. And if they do, they'll sweep this team. They'll go home and just put it away. And you'll see them catch fire in the same ways you saw after the trade deadline when obviously they went to Boston and went boom, 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 and they went to Oklahoma City and went boom, boom, boom. And the world, the NBA world, if not the Cavs world, said, LeBron has help. My man Shannon Sharp was virtually throwing a victory parade across the table from me about the acquisitions at the trade deadline. So they're all still there. Yet every day I have to go in and hear, he just doesn't have enough help. Nobody helps for LeBron. Watch. He had help Sunday when it mattered, when he checked out, and he will have enough help tonight. And when is the next one? Is it Thursday night? Game 2, Thursday night. He'll have enough help. You just watch. And the 2 stars on the other side will not be enough help for their teammates. You just watch. Which leads me to the other conference semifinal. Just a quick thought on the Boston Celtics. I picked the Philadelphia 76ers to win the East. That means I picked them to beat LeBron and company in the Eastern Conference Finals. That would be a spectacle. That would be a battle royal. The old versus the new. Is it time to pass this torch, LeBron James? Is it time to join the torch, so to speak? Could LeBron, after losing the Eastern Conference Finals, then say, I want to, if I can't beat them, I will join them next year in Philadelphia? Interesting. Kevin Durant did it. Kevin Durant, quote unquote, got away with it. He just got savaged on the internet. He took incredible all-time ridicule from his critics. And yet what happened? He joined forces with Golden State, and he was the Finals MVP, and nobody can really remember, no, what did he do? He left Russell Westbrook, and then the other night, the team that I picked, because I had nobody left, I didn't have my Spurs left in the West, but so I took a plunge on my hometown team, Oklahoma City, grew up, born and raised, love Oklahoma City, hi Oklahoma City if you're watching, and I said, maybe this is the year, maybe Russ will have enough help from Carmelo, and as I now call him, George Paul, to get through the West and get to the finals and win the finals and to get a measure of revenge over Kevin Durant for leaving him. And what happened? Once again, somewhere Kevin Durant, what night was that? Friday night, last Friday night. I still haven't recovered from it. I may never recover from the last minute of that game in which the Thunder had 6 straight shots, which is hard to do in a single possession. 6 straight shots. I thought Paul George got fouled shooting a 3 on the first shot of that possession. He also shot and looked like he might have gotten fouled. I probably wouldn't have called that. I know by the letter of the law I would have called that one. But the point is, it's just hard to play with Russell. Nobody has a bigger will. He almost willed them back home in that game. And if they'd gotten home for Game 7, they would have won it, and they would have beaten the Rockets in the second round. I just believe they're a bad matchup for the Rockets, but Gobert is a terrible matchup for Russell because Russell can't get to the rim against him. He's just too long and too tall, and his timing is too good. He times Russell so beautifully, so brilliantly, that he takes Russell out of what Russell does best, which is just get the ball to the basket or to leave it for Steven Adams. And it just wasn't enough because Russ had to resort to shooting threes, which is not his strength. And he took 43 shots, and I can't remember, 17 threes. It was a nightmare, but he almost pulled it off. The greatest warrior will. It's as great as any since Jordan, and Kobe's obviously up there, but so is Russ. He is up there in that echelon with those guys for just warrior will. And yet, in the end, even that couldn't pull it off. And so it's left on the other side. Rockets looks like they're a bad match for Gobert because they can just shoot the lights out from three, and they did the other day. Would they make 17 threes? That's it. And they all said after the game, we just shoot threes. So Gobert gets rendered useless just watching threes fly over his head through the basket. And obviously you can't goaltend those threes like you could once upon a time, or then Gobert would have a big advantage. But you can't do that, even though LeBron got away with the goaltend, which could have ended that series. So, back to the Boston Celtics and the Sixers. I did pick the Sixers to win the East. I must admit, the more I think about it, the more nervous I get about what Boston did to the Sixers in Game 1. The Sixers have a little bit of live dive from three, just a little bit going on now that they've added Bellinelli, Ilyasova, obviously Šarić shoots threes, and clearly J.J. Redick. Covington's starting to wear me out. He shoots a bunch of threes, and he made no threes the other night. And they didn't make what they make 5 last night. And Boston made 17. But just a quick point of order, just the job that Brad Stevens is doing with that basketball team. That's a basketball team. There's no Kyrie, all-star. There's no Gordon Hayward, all-star. There's no Jaylen Brown, at least the other night. Last night he had to sit with the hamstring. So he's going in, he would have been, at the top of the list as your next upcoming all-star. And yet now it looks like Jason Tatum's bound to be an all-star. And Al Horford's a 5-time all-star. Doesn't get any credit for it. That slips everybody's mind. And all of a sudden, Terry Rozier, what is it about these Louisville kids? They just get lost in Rick Pitino's system. Donovan Mitchell sort of came from nowhere. And I thought he should have been Rookie of the Year. I'm sure Ben Simmons is going to win it, but I thought Donovan Mitchell should have won it. And now it looks like Terry Rozier should win something for what he keeps doing in the playoffs, because he's come from nowhere. But he was the 16th overall pick in the draft, not in the lottery, but still mid-first round pick, sort of like Kawhi Leonard territory. I'm about to get to Kawhi Leonard. And I just have immense respect for what they did to Philly. And I have immense fear of them going forward because they are a handful. They were the number 1 defensive team, and they were number 1 in guarding the three-point shot. Number 1 defending the three, Boston. Number 2 defending the three was Philadelphia, and Philly got roasted from three. So something's going to have to give here in Game 2, but if it's Philly giving again, because they're just not quite ready for this quiet little force that has become the Boston Celtics without 2 all-stars. Jaylen Brown, I assume, is going to play. They said he probably could have played Game 1. Man, I'm starting to worry about my pick. But I do love the Sixers. And Joel Embiid, see, he goes for 31 and 13. It didn't matter. They still lost by 16. How do you explain that? 3-point shooting plus 32 points? 36 points? What was it? Let's see. 36 points. Plus 36 points from the three-point line. You're going to win some home games doing that. Sixers look like they are the future, though. Has it arrived? I keep using, for your Cowboy fans out there, the analogy that the Sixers remind me of the triplets, Troy, Emmett, Michael, 92, a season I wrote a whole book about, when that whole team arrived a year ahead of schedule, in part because of the last-second end-of-camp trade for Charles Haley from the rival 49ers in the NFC. And all of a sudden, magic happened. And they weren't quite ready, but they went to San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, and Troy hit Alvin Harper for a big late touchdown, and they shocked Steve Young in the 49ers, and they went and blasted Buffalo in the Super Bowl, and they were Super Bowl champs. They arrived a year ahead of schedule, and that's what I have been seeing from the Sixers, and I'm sticking with my pick. I'm only wavering because I'm nervous, because the Celtics are for real. Terry Rozier looks like he is for real, just fearless. He looks like he's becoming a near star. Wow. Brings me to Philly going forward. Philly's obviously still the future, but it's going to be Philly and Boston in the East, it looks like, for years to come. Okay? So, who's going to Philly next year? Could it be LeBron, or could it be final topic here. Check my watch here. Yeah, we still got a little time. Could it be Kawhi Leonard? Shocking to me, let's say startling to me, that I looked at the odds last night of what Las Vegas thinks will happen to Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, the best odds right now are that he'll still stay in San Antonio. I'm a Spurs fan, have been since the 1980s, Iceman Gervin days. This was as painful a year to watch as I can ever remember. Was for my Cowboys and for my Spurs, but for very different reasons. Cowboys lost Zeke for 6 games, lost Sean Lee for 6 games. Suspension, injury, but this was just bizarre. We, as in the Spurs, lost Kawhi for all but 9 games. And I thought going into the year that Kawhi Leonard had a real shot at winning MVP. Best two-way player in basketball. Top 2 or 3 defender. And last year, he began to figure out how to make the three-point shot, especially when it mattered the most. He became a deadly clutch shooter. Won a bunch of games. I'm going to say it one last time. They had Golden State on the ropes in Game 1 of the Conference Finals last year at Oakland. They're up 23 third quarter. And you know what happened? Zaza Pacheep shot happened. He stuck that size 50 or whatever it is sneaker underneath Kawhi as he came down. And the rest is history because the Spurs were history. And they blew the 23-point lead without Kawhi, and Kawhi couldn't go forward, although I think he probably could have played if they thought they had any chance from that point on. And he didn't. And that was pretty much the end of Kawhi as I knew and loved him. He managed to play 9 games this year, but he continued to complain about a quadriceps muscle that has taken a beating. He's had some contusions. He took a knee earlier this year. He'd taken one last year. He maybe got it hit 2 or 3 times. Again, it's just a deep bruise. And yet, for reasons I can't explain, it cost him basically the entire basketball season. And so now the conjecture rises, stay or go. Will they trade him? Would they give him the max? Would they give him $219 million to recommit to San Antonio? I hope not. As I've said on Undisputed, again, 9:30 to noon Eastern on Fox Sports 1. As I said again and again, I'm a Spurs diehard, and I am done with Kawhi Leonard. Over and out. He does not clearly want to be there, so they should ship him out. And I know the Kawhis of the world do not grow on trees in San Antonio. You can't just snap your fingers and go find a Kawhi because R.C. Buford, the best GM in basketball, pulled off the steal, not of the century. It's got to be way up there as all time. He traded George Hill straight up for that 15th pick that year. What are we going back to 2012? Straight up, George Hill, the guy you're about to see play for LeBron's team. That George Hill, who I never loved as a Spur. I respected him, but I never loved him. And he traded George Hill to Larry Bird and the Pacers straight up for the, 15th overall pick, with which he used on Kawhi Leonard. San Diego State, no big deal. I didn't hear a whole lot of buzz about him, I must admit. I probably watched him a couple times. I didn't see that. I did not see that. Quiet man, quiet game. And yet he rose to prominence, and he won a championship, and he turned into the best two-way player in basketball. And that's not just from me. Steve Kerr said it. Reggie Miller said it. A lot of people said it at the end of last year. And then he quit on my franchise. And he has new management, new advisors. His uncle Dennis is now his chief advisor. And his agent has taken a more prominent role. He used to have 2 agents. One the Spurs liked and trusted, and he's gone and out. And the other agent they don't really get along with. And yet, the most conservative and patient medical staff in all of sports, not even close, all of sports, patient all year, and finally got to a point about 2 months ago and said, we clear Kawhi Leonard to play basketball. He's got a bruised quadriceps tendon, and Tony Parker then spoke out and said, my injury was 100 times worse than Kawhi's, and it was 100 times worse. Thank you for saying that, Tony Parker. He ruptured his quadriceps tendon. He ruptured it, tore in two. Rupture. And that was obviously earlier in last year's playoffs. So he was gone for Golden State too. And it really took a lot out of Tony, and he's still not nearly what he used to be. And I think the injury, whatever he had left in him, it took a lot out of him. So it was kind of hard to watch Tony Parker. So I'm glad that he said that. But here's what shocked me about the Las Vegas odds. Number 2 on that list was Philadelphia. So the odds makers are saying it's most likely he stays in San Antonio. I'm going to disagree with that, but I get that those are the odds. But second best odds are he winds up in Philadelphia. Why would that be? Let us count the ways. His uncle Dennis lives up in New Jersey, not too far from Philadelphia. Obviously, Philly is going to be the place to play basketball if you want to win championships. And let me just throw this in. Kawhi Leonard hooked up with a surgeon in New York. I know of Jonathan Glashow. I know Jonathan Glashow. He's a great doctor, great surgeon. And yet he is a surgeon for the Philadelphia 76ers. So the group that Greg Popovich used to talk about was a New York group that featured Jonathan Glashow, another man I know named Dr. Keith Pine. He's more of a massage, physical therapist. And he's been working on Kawhi. Dr. Glashow's looked at Kawhi. So that was his group up in New York that disagreed with the Spurs doctors. But it's just intriguing, isn't it, that Jonathan Glashow, I know his pet project has been Joel Embiid. So, Dr. Glashow like to see Kawhi maybe in Philly? Sure, he might. I'm just going to guess that he would. Close as he is to the Sixers ownership, sure, I could see that. So all of a sudden some signs start to point to Kawhi to Philadelphia. Now again, the Spurs would want to trade Kawhi to Philadelphia. So I will just throw this out. Would they at all consider Kawhi Leonard straight up for Ben Simmons? I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure you Sixers fans are howling and screaming. But Ben isn't much of a shooter. He's a pretty good defender. In fact, he's been ranked high most of the year. But Kawhi could be the best defender. I don't know. Could be interesting. Could that'd be the kind of trade that RC would want to pull off? Maybe I'm looking at it through Spurs-colored glasses. But there is talent there. There's a lot going on. I'm not a Markelle Fultz fan, so don't tell me Fultz straight up for Kawhi. I can't even stomach the thought. But there may be a combination thereof. But the big piece to me is Joel Embiid, 31 and 13 last night. Just a flat-out monster, just unstoppable. Former Spur Aaron Baines, big-bodied, 6'11", 7-footer. He's got virtually no shot against Joel Embiid. Now, Sixers insiders tell me that internally they think Ben Simmons is going to ultimately be more valuable than Joel. I'm not sure about that. As much respect as I have for Ben as the 7-foot point guard, I don't know. But one or the other would have to go back to San Antonio for Kawhi, in my view. If you added him to those two, it'd just be over. But anyway, there's got to be some trade going on. But I'm just telling you that with the Uncle Dennis connections to Jersey, Philadelphia, Dr. Glashow to Philadelphia, agent lives in the Northeast, somewhere up there, pretty close also. Could be. So I could see all signs pointing to Philadelphia, and I believe that Kawhi was advised to just take his time with the injury this year. I'll never know, because nobody will ever know except Kawhi Leonard. This is what I've said my whole career. I wish there's some kind of machine that you could hook up to Kawhi that each of us could just put our hand in while it was hooked up to Kawhi's quadriceps. And you could feel for 1 minute what Kawhi was feeling like when he jumped up and down on where the quad tendon attaches the top of the knee. See what the pain level is. He said excruciating, can't play. I'm doubtful about that. I'm thinking that his advisor said, you don't want to spend the rest of your career in San Antonio. Let's just not play. Let's just burn this bridge to the ground. And to me, they burned it to the ground. Again, the organization was hoping that Kawhi Leonard would become the next Tim Duncan, not in game, but in stature, in leadership, in face of franchise. Quiet leadership. Not that I ever sensed any real leadership from Kawhi, but he sold that team out. He just flat out quit on that team and basically said, trade me. He just basically wore a sign all year that said, trade me. I want out. That's how it came across to me. And it seems like the logical destination is some kind of trade with Philadelphia. Now, I know RC, and he is the ultimate trader. And he will come up with some way, somehow, it could be a sign and trade, but he's got to get something very valuable in return back for Kawhi. I just don't think they want to go forward with him because he's just going to be terminally unhappy in San Antonio. And you don't want that guy as the face of your franchise. You don't want to keep building around that guy. He just showed you, he quit on you in a year in which, now, I picked the Spurs to win it all. That was a really good team, but it was, you take the superstar out, you take LeBron out of the Cavs, what do you got? I mean, I can say take somebody out of Golden State, but they're just too loaded. But the Spurs had the depth. They had the experience. They had the unity coming off last year to take it up another level. I like the team. They came within one game of having the best home record in basketball. Okay. They just needed Kawhi, and he quit on them. But I'm going to bet you tonight that the ultimate end game here for Kawhi Leonard was to get to Philadelphia. I just feel it in my bones. It all makes sense to me. There are too many Philly-like connections at work here. Which brings me back to the playoffs, which brings me back to tonight. I'm going to say the Cavaliers, in an upset, close game, late game heroics by somebody other than LeBron. I don't think this will be LeBron's night late like it was in the one game against the Pacers. What was that, game 4? I think somebody else is going to rise and shine. Maybe Kyle Korver hits a late big 3 to win this one. I think the Cavs, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, but they're 6.5-point underdogs. I think they steal game 1 against a team that with Houston had the best home record. I think the Raptors are being outrageously overrated. I think LeBron James will take one look at Drake and say, watch this. I say the Cavs will win tonight, and I'm going to stick with my pick. They'll clash headlong with the Philadelphia 76ers, who will barely survive Boston, and the Sixers will finally dethrone the King. I'm sticking with it. I can't wait to talk about it tomorrow on Undisputed. 9:30 Eastern, 9:30 to noon Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Thank you for hanging with me tonight, Facebook. And for once, ironically, I'm about to go root for the King. Later, Facebook.